Hello everyone. I hope all of you are doing fine and preparing for your exams in a good way. So today we are taking a session on question number 2 of PYQ 2024. So I will be doing the solution for question number 2 today for anthropology. So if you don't know me, if you're seeing this video for the first time, I am Aditya Vikram Agarwal and I have scored AIR 9 rank 9 in UPSC 2024 exam, and my option was anthropology. You can also follow my Telegram channel, that is IAS Adi Vikram, where I have shared my strategy on Telegram related to all the GS subjects as well as anthropology and of course essay. So without further wait, let's start. So we are going to start with question number 2. Question number 2 of the anthropology is 20 marker. So let me give you a small brief. So till now we have done question number 1 and question number 5, which were the compulsory questions containing 5 parts each, A, B, C, D, E, and they were 10 marker, right? So one needed to write 150 words in those. Okay, and now we are moving on to question number 2. So question number 2 is 20 marker, and here the word limit is 250 words and the number of pages given are 4 pages. So first thing first, what should be the time limit? In 10 marker we had the time limit to write a question was 7 minutes. In 15 marker that we will be seeing, that are question number 2 part B and C, those are 15 marker. So in that the time limit should be 10 minutes. And for 20 marker, for example question number 2 part A, 15 minutes should be given ideally to them. So 15 minutes should be the time limit in which you have to complete the answer, right? So starting with this thought in the mind, let's start and let's see the question number 2 part A. So the question talks about discuss historical particularism as a critical development to the classical evolutionism, right? So basically it is asking is classical evolutionism आया, ठीक है, उसका there was some criticism about it, there was some critique about it, and due to that the historical particularism was developed, right? So we have to tell why historical particularism came and what were the features of it and what were the criticism of classical evolutionism. All right, so first thing classical evolutionism, second thing is what was the critique, and third was historical particularism that came as a result of shortcomings of classical evolutionism. So we will be starting with the definition of classical evolutionism. It claimed that all human societies progressed through fixed unilinear stages. What were the unilinear stages? From savagery to barbarism to civilization, right? And this approach was challenged by emergence of historical particularism, which was proposed by none other than Franz Boas. If you remember, the Franz Boas, he studied the Kwakithul Indians, right? The potlatch system. If you want to remember some of the 19th century, late 19th century classical evolutionists, anthropology paper requires you to write many scholars. So you need to remember some of the scholars' names. So in classical evolutionism, you have E.V. Taylor, you have L.H. Morgan, and you have J.J. Bachofan, right? So you can use these scholars wherever you need them. Okay, so we are done with definition of classical evolutionism and how it was challenged by historical particularism thought, and particularly the Franz Boas was the proponent of historical particularism. Then we write about what were the features of classical evolutionism, right? So the core assumption was cultures evolve linearly from savagery to barbarism to civilization. The key proponents were E.B. Taylor, who gave the book Primitive Culture, and he also gave the definition of culture in this. Culture was defined by E.B. Taylor in this book, and he also said that culture is a progressive evolution, right? L.H. Morgan was the other scholar of classical evolutionism. Book he gave was Ancient Societies, in which he talked about the kinship systems and technology, like how the technology evolved during the this was through it he explained the classical evolutionism. Fraser, one other person, the book Golden Bough. So it is a very important book in which he mentioned how magic came first, then religion came second, then science. So progressive, unilinear progression happened. Then there was, so what I explained was classical evolutionism. We will explain first. Then we will say there were some limitations and there was some criticism about it. What was the criticism? That it was ethnocentric in nature. So non-Western cultures were seen as backward. Western cultures were seen as civilized, and all the cultures were said to progress towards the Western culture. For example, let's say there is some tribe in Africa. So it was said to be either savage or barbarism that was followed, and it was going towards civilization. So this was ethnocentric in nature, on which Western cultures were given undue importance and said that they were the best kind of, and the other were cultures seen as backward. And there was reliance on second-hand data. So these anthropologists of classical evolution was also called as armchair anthropologists, right? Because they relied on second-hand data and they formed theories based on these data. So due to these limitations, and they were also criticized for being speculative, and they also lacked some field work. They did not do any field work, right? But due to that, there was some emergence of historical particularism. And who was the proponent? Franz Boas. So he gave the concept of cultural relativism. He said no culture is inferior or superior. Each culture should be understood on its own terms. For example, let's say there is some practice. Let's say there is some practice going on in some Indian tribe of, let's say, Chenchus. So Chenchus are famous for basket weaving. So that should be seen as a part of their culture rather than being seen as a backwardness or something like that, right? Then there is particularism, one of the features of so particularism says that what culture is in the present day now, it is shaped due to some of the historical events, right? So for example, there is some tribe living in coastal areas. All right, so coastal areas means that tribe would have let's say food as fish or something related to ocean resources, right, as a food pattern. So we can't say that their culture is backward or forward, but we can say that the culture is particular because the historical events or the places historical events have shaped their culture. Then the third point is rejection of universal laws. So they believe that there is no single law or theory that can explain all human development, and every culture is unique. Every culture is unique and there is no specific law. And they said that diffusion, trait similarities. So we can say that there are some trait similarities between two cultures. So they may have been result from diffusion and not because of parallel evolution. Parallel evolution was given by evolutionists, classical evolutionists, that if there are two similar things in two similar cultural things in two different tribes, then they can be said to be parallelly evolved due to independent innovations. But historical particularists say that this may have been due to diffusionism. For example, let's say there is some dress that is being worn by two different tribes and they both look similar. So historical particularism says that this may have been due to the diffusion of one culture to another culture, right? Then the research methods that they followed was research work. They did field work, traditions, participant observation. They wrote ethnographies which had thick description of language, rituals, folklore, kinships, right? And they stressed on ethnographic data, language myths. Scholars you can put Bo studied the Kwakitul, Ruth Benedict studied gave the patterns of culture on how cultures they have cultural trait and then it forms a broader pattern of culture. Mead study and the ethnographic called as coming of age in Samoa, where she talked about how adolescents in Samoa behave, the behavior of general people in there, right? So what was a criticism of this historical particularism? The criticism was that it was anti-theoretical. So because it said that you cannot generalize something. Every culture is particular, but neo-evolutionists such as Julian Stewart and Leslie White, they said that there are some things that can be generalized for a wider part of society, right? There are some things that can be said to be general. So overemphasis on history and uniqueness, so it undermines search for general laws, right? So these neo-evolutionists, they introduce generalization that there are some things in cultures that are general in every society, right? For example, let's say rewarding good behavior, a simple thing. So you can find this is present in every society. So this could be generalized. It can be made into a general law. So this is something which neo-evolutionists said that it is true, and it was a criticism for but historical particularities. They also criticize for emphasizing on diffusion and underestimating the role of internal innovations. So there are two things could exist in two different tribes because there are independent innovations, internal innovations, rather than just because they are diffusion. Okay, the no grand models. So what is the relevance? So final relevance we can see very relevant. He adopted Bosnian ideas while working with Indian tribes and advocated the preservation of unique tribal cultures. Example, Northeastern Frontier Agency he worked. So here we can see that how paper 2 we are connecting with paper 1, right? And bringing the scholars of paper 2 such as Warrior Elvin. And so we can conclude that historical particularism, it was a turning point in anthropology where it gave the concepts of cultural relativism. The diffusionism was explained in a better way on how cultures diffuse from one point to another point. It challenged the Eurocentric or ethnocentric idea. All right, and it laid the foundation of modern anthropology. It also led to some of the scholars such as Margaret Mead, Ruth Benedict, A.L. Kroiber, who gave the concepts of culture personality school. So that also developed somewhere from historical particularism, right? So that's how we will conclude. Done. So we move on to part B. Question number 2, part B.